Good evening, everyone, and thank you for coming. My name is Laura Dodd. I'm the Senior Transportation Planner with the city. On behalf of the City of Port St. Lucie, I would like to thank you again for taking the time out of your evening to come and join us in this discussion. What we will be talking about tonight is the Port St. Lucie Boulevard South Corridor Planning Study. This is a collaborative effort with the Regional Planning Council. With us from the Regional Planning Council, we have Tom, Dana, Lauren, and Kim, who will be leading the presentation, Dr. Kim Delaney. So with that, I'd like to go ahead and let Kim take it from here, and she can go over the presentation with you. Thank you.
Thanks. So good evening, and thanks for the opportunity to present to you tonight. My name's Kim Delaney. As Laura mentioned, I'm with the Treasure Coast Regional Planning Council, and tonight's workshop is the first workshop to help develop a master plan for the Port St. Lucie Boulevard corridor. There we go. The agenda for tonight, some introductions at the beginning, and then we'll have a chance to talk through the purpose of the study, the background conditions, some planning ideas and questions for you to think about, and then we're going to look for your input to help guide the development of the plan. Whoops, let me back up for just a moment already. There we go. The study area is that segment of Port St. Lucie Boulevard that runs from Gatlin to Becker. There we go. Of course, Gatlin Boulevard at the northern end, this yellow dashed line is a match line. So we're covering that section that runs from Gatlin all the way down past Tulip, Alcantara, continuing down past Parr, and all the way down to Becker Road. Okay, so this is our section. It's about 3.5 miles. There we go. Who's the Regional Planning Council? We're a public agency that's chartered in state statute, one of 10 regional planning councils in the state, and we're designed to help local governments with projects like this. So we really exist as an extension of the city's staff. We have a 28-member board, 18 elected officials, 10 gubernatorial appointees. We only do work for public entities, and we have specialists on our team that focus in urban design and land development and transportation planning and economic development, emergency evacuation, hurricane preparedness, all of those issues that are helpful sometimes for local government to augment their staff to work on special projects. So we're a public agency, that's how we're designed, our region covers 4 counties. The Treasure Coast region is Palm Beach, Martin, St. Lucie, and Indian River counties. Mayor Martin actually is a member of the Planning Council board. And so that's how we're structured. And we're down the street from the city with our offices in Stewart. Okay? So a couple of background questions I mentioned. If you wanted to join, some of these are just fun, but then they give us some demographic information. If you haven't signed up in Zoom yet, these are the Zoom survey questions. Just to test to make sure Zoom is working, just for fun, if you had to choose a superpower, what might that superpower be? So if you want to participate, if you can pull up your Zoom link in your phone, would you choose leaping tall buildings in a single bound, flying at the speed of light, swimming like a dolphin, having super strength, or using the magic lasso of truth? So I'll give you 5 seconds to answer that one. Maybe 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. There we go. I'm going to actually answer mine because I have the magic lasso of truth in my car. So, and there we go. Okay, so we have a varied selection of superpowers that participants would like to see just for fun. So getting into the more serious questions. So let's go on. So how would you describe yourself? We want to get an idea of who's participating in the survey tonight. Are you a native to Port St. Lucie? Are you a native to Florida? Are you a native to the U.S.? Or are you native outside the United States? So I'll just give you guys a couple of seconds. Maybe we'll say 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Go ahead, Navi. Okay, so about half the folks participating tonight in the survey are native to the state of Florida, about half from outside in the U.S. And we have about 12% maybe that are native to Port St. Lucie. Just trying to get an understanding. one of the things about Port St. Lucie is that it's very interesting in its evolution. It's had this tremendous inbound of new population, especially in the last 10 years, so that's really changed the conditions a lot. Some people have a long history of what's always happened in the city, and other people were literally just moving in a couple of weeks ago. So I want to get an understanding of who's participating tonight. Go ahead, next question. What age range do you fall into? So the generations are typically described with different names that categorize about a 15 to 20 year time span. So are you Generation Z, meaning you're born before 2015? Generation Y, the generation I was in, including the millennials, I'm sorry, Generation Y, my sons are in that generation. I wish I was. The millennials, born in 1980 to 1994. Gen X, my generation, born between 65 and 80. A boomer, born between 46 and 64. Or are you a member of the greatest generation, born before 1946? So I'll give people a couple of minutes to answer that if you're participating in the survey. Again, this is just to get us a good idea of background. So 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Go ahead, Avi. There we go. So not showing on the survey, just for a heads up, but showing on the screen. We have the majority of folks are boomers. It looks like about 54% or so are boomers. No Gen Z participating tonight. Everybody's busy doing their homework maybe. And then the rest is, for the most part, millennials and Generation X. We're going to talk a little bit about the demographics and the demographic changes that are taking place in the city. The city is getting older and younger at the same time, which is interesting, and that's what's happening in the state of Florida. There's the Silver Tsunami of older residents. This is a great place to retire, and there's a whole generation of young buyers and owners and renters that are coming into the city because it's such a desirable place to live. Fourth question. There we go. Go ahead to the next slide. Which of the following best describes you with respect to where you live? Of course, we're focused on the Port St. Lucie Boulevard corridor, but the city's 120 square miles, so we're just trying to get an idea of where you live. Do you live in the city north of Gatlin or south of Gatlin? Do you live in St. Lucie County outside of the city limits? Do you live north or south of St. Lucie County? Sometimes we get participants that are in projects like this one that own property but live outside. Do you live outside of Florida, or are you actually a resident of another galaxy? So 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And let's see. Okay, so we have one resident from another galaxy, which there's always at least one in a workshop. So I just wanted to confirm that was consistent. But for the most part, the folks that are participating in the survey are south of Gatlin Boulevard. Not a surprise, because that's our focus for tonight. So that really reinforces that the public outreach that the city undertook got to some residents, so residents are participating tonight. So I'm very gratified as your presenter tonight to know that we at least have folks that live on the corridor that are participating tonight. So let's go ahead to the last one of these survey questions. And if you're employed, which best describes your journey to work? Do you work at home? Do you walk or bike to work? Do you drive your car? Do you use a van pool or a carpool? Do you take the bus? Or do you not work at this time? Just trying to get an idea of kind of the type of folks that are participating. So let's go ahead and go with 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And the survey results say about a third of the folks tonight do not work at this time, and about a third work from home of the folks that are participating. So, and the balance drive their car to work. So not a lot of people using the multimodal transportation network, which is going to be one of the topics of conversation tonight, biking, walking, or rolling otherwise up to and along Port St. Lucie Boulevard. So that's a conversation for us to have with you this evening. And not surprisingly, a fairly substantial number of folks are working from home. We know that's a national trend, and that's a national trend that's going to be pervasive now going forward. And that changes the characteristics in communities. Not as many people have to leave to go to work, that changes opportunities along corridors like Port St. Lucie Boulevard for folks that are home more often and want to access goods and services. So thank you for giving us some feedback. We're going to do this polling again later in the presentation when we have some more substantive questions for you to help us understand with respect to your preferences. But I appreciate you giving us some insight into who's here tonight. So, I'm sorry, one more question I forgot, and that is how far do you travel for work? And this is an important characteristic in the city of Port St. Lucie. So, last one I promise for now. If you're traveling to work, how far do you go? Is it less than 5 miles, which is within the city of Port St. Lucie? Is it 5 to 10, 11 to 20, 21 to 50, more than 50 miles, which we know happens for residents in the city of Port St. Lucie? Or do you work from home? Again, if you're traveling, we just wanted to capture that. So if we can do this question maybe in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Go ahead, Avi. And again, consistently, so the folks that are participating continue to participate. A large chunk of folks are working from home now, but we see a fairly good distribution of the people that are traveling to work, ranging from within the neighborhood, really, to up to 50 miles. That's one of the characteristics that we identified when we helped the city with the Southern Grove Master Plan last year. The city has a tremendous amount of employees that it distributes across the region, but not as many jobs in the city to provide those that live-work environment. That is at least one of the things we hear is very desirable. So that's one of the things to talk about tonight, is adding those workplace opportunities perhaps along the Port St. Lucie Boulevard corridor to make that commute a little shorter and actually contain dollars in the community, maybe make a better quality of life instead of having as many commuters out on the network. So, okay, so jumping into the presentation, a corridor study is an opportunity for a community to take a look at a transportation facility like Port St. Lucie Boulevard and understand how we might want to improve or maximize the infrastructure along that corridor. So we have transportation improvements, we have water and sewer, we have stormwater improvements as well. It looks at improving safety, access, and mobility. Safety is the paramount goal in a corridor study, to make sure we have safe traveling conditions. But in addition to that, do we have good access for folks to get to the places they want to go? And do we have good mobility options? Can you get to those places with the means that you have? Corridor studies look at enhancing aesthetics, the appearance of the corridor, air quality, if we can accomplish that, coordinating land uses along the corridor, and also supporting infill development and redevelopment. In a couple of slides, we'll look at the vacant land that continues to be present along the Port St. Lucie Boulevard corridor, and that's one of the things to talk about tonight, is how that vacant remaining land can develop or redevelop over time. Just to look backwards for a couple of moments, Port St. Lucie is a remarkable community to work with, so it is really our honor to have a chance to assist the city with these conversations. So Port St. Lucie, I mean, I love the shuffleboard picture. It's kind of hard to find a shuffleboard court these days, but you know, as Port St. Lucie emerged from the 1950s forward, it was really this incredibly desirable little piece of heaven for folks, mostly coming down from the Northeast and the Midwest, to find a home that was an affordable home. In great quantities in this part of the Treasure Coast region. Of course, the Port St. Lucie was actually established in the 1890s, right? St. Lucia and the bluff near Sandpiper was the original establishment in Port St. Lucie, and it's emerged over time to become one of the fastest growing cities in the state of Florida. In fact, it's one of the fastest growing cities in the United States now. And the 7th largest city, from a very humble beginnings as a community that wasn't planned with a lot of focus on commercial opportunities, workplace opportunities, and providing access to goods and services for the 80,000 platted lots that were contained in the original Port St. Lucie plan. That's one of the challenges that we're trying to help inform the city's decision-making about, which is to better balance the land use composition in the city. One of the reasons why there's so many folks that are driving 5 to 50 miles a day is because we don't have jobs in the city to support the residential base. So that's one of the challenges that we're trying to better understand through workshops like this one to help inform the city's decisions over time. Come on in. We're just getting started with our Port St. Lucie Boulevard Corridor Workshop. The city has, as I mentioned, is one of the fastest growing cities, not just in Florida, but in the southeastern United States. The planning department's done a tremendous job in assembling the history, and I went ahead and included the link because I find this data so impressive in tracking the growth and development of the city over time. What's remarkable and what you can see in they're fairly small maps, so I apologize for the size, but what you can see is the city's expansion over time as it annexed, particularly to the west, to include the property and tradition that takes us all the way out to Range Line Road. There are lots of reasons why people love Port St. Lucie. It's a great place to live. So it's a truly multi-generational community. It's a very live and let live community. There's a fairly good diversity of housing price points. So as I was looking at the headlines and the newspaper articles to understand the growth patterns just in this last year, shockingly, just a year and a half ago, it was one of the top 10 places to find a home under $250,000. Not so easy to accomplish in today's market. Now, it's one of the best places to find a home under $500,000, which is a remarkable statement about how the market has exploded. It's also one of the things that threatens the sustainability of our cities. So that said, Port St. Lucie has educational uses. It is developing workplace uses out, particularly in the west, in the Southern Grove Jobs Corridor. It's becoming more bikeable. It's becoming more walkable. It's investing in public art to really celebrate the quality of life in the city. And it also has developed, especially over the last 10 to 15 years, entertainment destinations. So between baseball at the Mets Stadium, Tradition Town Center as a downtown destination, and the tremendous environmental preserves and park and recreational programs the city has been investing in, it has added to the livability as a place, which is one of the things that underscores becoming the fastest growing, one of the fastest growing cities in the state of Florida. It's still affordable, and it has amenities to offer. Again, the headlines about the city's success are really tremendous. One of the best boom towns in America, and actually when you think about the job growth opportunities in Southern Grove, an economic development engine that's really unparalleled in the scale of growth the city can accommodate in the Southern Grove corridor. Consistently, one of the best places to live and retire. I touched on the fact that the city's getting older and younger at the same time. It is historically and continues to be a popular and successful retirement destination. Retirees have different needs than people that are still in the workforce. They don't have to drive as much, but have some discretionary income to support goods and services on roadways like Port St. Lucie Boulevard. One of the best places to live on the East Coast, and really, I think perhaps most importantly, one of the safest places to live in the U.S. The next set of headlines talks about the desirability for young families to come into the city if they can find a home to raise a family in the city as well. So growth at the younger end of the spectrum and growth at the older end of the spectrum as well. Now, one of the things we try to understand when we help communities with master plans is the relationship between what happens on the public side of the property line and the private side of the property line. So this is kind of a classic representation of the challenge in city building. The first layer of focus is the public space. For us, in the city of Port St. Lucie, it's the public rights-of-way, the canals that the city controls, and drainage ditches. The city has control through its stormwater plan, the parks and civic spaces, parks, civic spaces, and the schools actually play a role also in that public inventory. So the other side of the focus, of course, is what's happening on the private side of the property line. There's always a relationship between the city's desires and what the development community delivers through the public approval process. And when you stitch those things together, then you have the true city. And so in tonight's conversation, and as we develop the master plan, we want to have that conversation with you to understand what should be happening on the public side of the line, in the roadways, on the canal banks, and in our public spaces, and then what are your expectations on the private side of the line as well. Every development approval is really a public-private partnership, and a developer is coming in to use entitlements that are granted by the city to raise the value of a piece of land, And so the city has a voice in what happens on that private side of the line as well. So I don't want you to think there's anything that's off the table for discussion. It's all on the table for discussion as we work through a master plan for the city. Again, the city's population is truly remarkable. It's unparalleled in the region that I have the fortune of working for, and it's really unparalleled in the state. Almost a 30% growth in 10 years. The city's population is now 214,000, and the projection is somewhere in the 350 to 375,000 range. So a substantial amount of people to provide services for, and also a substantial force in the marketplace, because 215,000 buyers of things creates a lot of opportunity for the city to raise the standards for development if it wants to, because you are a market that isn't being tested. You're an existing market that's really a force to be reckoned with in many ways, right? Because you have the buying power of your residential base. One of the challenges in city building that we try to understand is how cities can become smart cities. This is it's an international move actually, and the city is really one of the leaders in using good technology, good outreach to understand what residents want, and a tremendously progressive investment program to improve the city's infrastructure to make it a great place. The city has great public outreach. It is such a pleasure to work with the city with its outreach efforts, because it has every form of communications in motion and has a great track record of good, solid public participation. And the city also does an annual effort to develop a strategic plan. So if you're not familiar with the strategic plan for the city, it's on the city's website. In the strategic plan, one of the opportunities the city identified was the need to look at major roadway corridors like Port St. Lucie Boulevard and develop a master plan to make sure that the city is doing all the things in the most efficient and effective way to make a great quality of life and maintain the desires that the residents have for how that corridor functions. So this effort comes out of the city's strategic planning process. There are additional corridors the city's identified. So if you have friends and neighbors that live along, friends and family that live along those corridors, continuing the outreach on behalf of the city is the way great plans are done. Okay. So existing conditions along the corridor. Oh, by the way, if you haven't already, if you can silence your cell phone, that would be great, because the ringtones are interesting but very hard for folks to hear sometimes, and when they go off. There are refreshments on the side table, and of course the restrooms are outside. I just wanted to mention that, and I apologize I didn't do that bit of administrative housekeeping before we started. So that said, the future land use designation along Port St. Lucie Boulevard is varied. The properties that front the corridor, for the most part, can be used for a range of different uses. They can be used for single-family residential, and there's lots of single-family residential existing and more coming, right? That's what's under construction. They're available for commercial use, residential commercial, retail, and office uses, okay? So that's the mix of uses that are available. One of the challenging things, and you can see from the corridor map, is all of the residential that immediately abuts the properties that are fronting the roadway. That creates for very challenging transitions. And so that's one of the things we want to focus on and get input from you about tonight, about how those relationships can be improved between commercial-oriented activities that tend to take place on the corridor and the residential neighborhoods that we want to protect that exist to the rear. The zoning, of course, corresponds to that as well. And so the zoning map, of course, illustrates, again, single-family residential exclusively for the most part around the study area, and then commercial, varied uses permitted along the corridor. Now, in terms of, as we think about how to break down the opportunities to look at the Port St. Lucie South corridor, there's the private side of the land and the public side of the land, right? So on the private side of the land, this map illustrates the vacant properties that are not yet developed as of today. Okay, so we have a 3.5-mile corridor, and let me just jump forward. The vacant properties that don't have permits on them already, actually, is what really the net opportunity for the private side of the line. So as we look at the corridor, where do we tend to have vacancies? Here's Gatlin Boulevard. There's some vacancies along the E5 Canal. This guy, by the way, is called the E5 Canal. There are vacancies that are very, very shallow along the corridor on both sides as we get down to larger vacant opportunities, but lots of residential construction in motion. When we get further south along the corridor, there's some opportunity around Tulip. And then the largest vacant opportunities are at Becker and Port St. Lucie Boulevard. So that's where the most depth is. One of the challenges that we have as planners when lots don't have a lot of depth is it doesn't give as many opportunities to arrange uses on that site, because we want to accommodate parking and stormwater, which net out a lot of developable area. So we want to hear from you tonight about the types of uses you want to see there, and then we'll do our best with our most creative planning efforts to figure out how those uses can be accommodated. But we know we have some challenges in the shallowness of those lots. And so that's just an observation. Whoops, next slide. The kinds of trends to think about as we think about those uses that you want to see along the corridor. The demographics are changing in the nation. The demographics Florida is reflecting those changes, and the city is in the heart of that demographic shift. So one of the things that's taking place across the state and in Port St. Lucie as well is what's referred to as the Silver Tsunami, and that is the baby boomers are aging out, and where they want to come is the state of Florida. And one of the places where they have found a wonderful place to be is the city of Port St. Lucie. So we know retirement destination in the city, thumbs up, that's happening. At the under end of the spectrum, the millennials are moving into a point where they're starting to buy homes. Millennials will be half the population of Earth by about 2030. And Port St. Lucie, again, remains one of the most affordable places for millennials to find housing. So those two ends of the spectrum are changing. What does that mean for us as a community? At the Silver Tsunami end of the spectrum, retirees have different demands. So they don't have to go to work, so they're home during the day. There are different services that are necessary for retirees, and they have spending power with the opportunity to contribute to commercial establishments, particularly along the Port St. Lucie Boulevard corridor, if we can accommodate them there. As older residents age, what we try to find in communities is ways to make those trips shorter if possible. It creates better quality of life and contains vehicles on the roadway network, so we don't have as much congestion on the roadway network. At the other end of the spectrum, millennials are starting to have families, and so we have young kids that come along with millennials, and those young kids are going to school. We have a couple of slides to illustrate how many kids are waiting at the bus stop on the corridor, and it's a lot of them. It's actually every stop sign is a de facto bus stop along the corridor at the southern end. And so that's a different consideration when you think about that population moving into the community, right, and starting to frequent the corridor, and the uses that are appropriate, and more importantly, the safety conditions that are present to make sure that population can navigate the corridor safely. What we also know is across the country, buyers are seeking livable, walkable, healthy lifestyles increasingly. So this is a trend that existed before COVID, and during COVID, this trend was really accelerated, where an increasing number of buyers are looking for the ability to walk to something other than their mailbox, right? Or walk around the block just for recreation. That's a good thing. Walking is the #1 recreational sport in the United States, actually, and having safe pedestrian networks is actually a factor that makes not for just better livability, better market values and better sustained values over time. But what increasingly buyers are looking for is the ability to walk to something to buy a coffee, something to buy a lunch, or something to go buy a good or service. And so one of the considerations that we want to hear from you about is ways that we can improve the walking conditions, particularly along Port St. Lucie Boulevard and accessing it so the city can deliver a better service to its residents and also be more competitive going forward as buyers come into the marketplace. What those demographic trends mean is there becomes demand for different types of housing units. The city's bread and butter is a single-family residential unit. In addition, there are buyers that are seeking multifamily housing opportunities that have lower costs of acquisition, sometimes less maintenance responsibilities, and pardon me, allow buyers to come into the market to become footholds in the community. So on this slide, there are different housing formats that are illustrated. At the top left is traditional single-family residential. Whoops, there we go. 2 units, a shared residential lot illustrated in the center. Small townhouses illustrated on the right. This actually is one of the few townhouse developments that is along the corridor. This is the 10-unit townhouse development that exists at the southern end of the corridor. Small apartments are also desirable for residents coming into the market, and then accessory units. If you have the ability to accommodate an accessory unit on your property, your aging parent can live there, your kid graduating who needs a place to live that is affordable can live there, or you can have a secondary source of income that comes from having an accessory unit. The lots tend to be fairly shallow, but it's one of the considerations we wanted to give you as we think about how the corridor infills over time. So one of the things we want to hear from you is, what are the types of residential units that make sense to you? If residential happens on the corridor, what's the form of residential that feels right to you? We know there's a lot of single-family residential being developed on the corridor. That creates a challenge from a safety standpoint because that's a lot of driveways intersecting the corridor that creates for different challenges. So if there are ways to still provide housing in a different format, help us understand what that might be, and we'll do our best job to design it in a way so we have the fewest number of driveways intersecting the corridor and the safest conditions, okay? The other thing we know that those trends indicate is a rising demand for mixed-use buildings. Now again, we have very shallow lots on the corridor, so this is going to be a tricky planning exercise, but if there's desire from you as residents to try to accommodate more mixed-use buildings, we want to understand that. Mixed use can take place in a variety of forms. Sites can be mixed horizontally with residential on one portion and non-residential or commercial on the other, or they can be mixed vertically, where you can have ground floor commercial or office space and upper story residential. So those are different ways mixed use can occur. What we want to hear from you is whether or not that's a desire. It's permitted on the corridor. We see it as a trend that's rising in the region. And if that's a desire, we want to try to test those sites that exist to find out how that can be delivered to you in the community over time. Neighborhood commercial uses, of course, another demand that comes with a rising population. Neighborhood commercial uses can be arranged on a site in a number of different formats with a corridor that has as much residential character to it. Neighborhood commercial uses can occur where they actually front the street and the parking is located to the rear. I have some slides to illustrate that in a moment. One of the other trends to consider, and it has an interesting pixelation on the slide, so excuse all of the extra pixelation there. One of the other trends to consider is the desire for a 15-minute city. Going along with the buyers that are seeking walkable, livable communities is the ability for a community to offer the daily needs of life within about 15 minutes. The gold standard of that is by walking or bike access to that. In Port St. Lucie, we know there's a lot of driving that's demanded. So we want to understand from you, what are the types of uses that would help Port St. Lucie achieve a 15-minute city? Can we do that with the uses coming in on the Port St. Lucie Boulevard corridor to achieve a better and a more sustainable condition? Complete Streets is a national move that focuses on the ability to enable roadways to accommodate all of the members of the traveling public. Okay, so complete streets make for complete communities. Port St. Lucie Boulevard, as it exists today, handles a lot of auto traffic, and we know there are sections that don't have sidewalks yet. So routinely, we see folks walking along the corridor to get from point A to point B. The city is in the process of expanding the roadway to add multi-use paths. Complete streets are designed to improve safety, access, and mobility in a manner that if you're driving, you feel safe, if you're walking, you feel safe, and if you're bicycling, you feel safe. If you're riding transit, you have accommodations that are appropriate for you. The reason why Complete Streets has become prioritized is that Florida has done a tremendous job of earning headlines as a dangerous place, particularly for pedestrians and cyclists. It's actually the most dangerous roadway network in the United States for pedestrians and cyclists. There's a direct relationship between the speed of drivers and the safety of a corridor. And that's a function of your field of view. So if you're traveling 40 miles an hour down the corridor, which is a typical condition, because you're moving quickly, your frame of reference is down the street, and you can't see folks that are coming into the corridor from the side. As the speed slows, your frame of reference widens, and you're able to start seeing the kid riding his bike, right, or the person walking out on the corridor. At 20 miles an hour, you have a full frame of view for the pedestrians on the shoulder, as well as the vehicles that you're interacting with. So there's a direct relationship between speed and safety that we want to explore in the corridor study. Why speed matters is the faster a car is going, the less likely someone is going to survive an accident. So at 20 miles an hour, you have a pretty good chance of surviving. It's a 10% fatality. At 40 miles an hour, 90% of pedestrians don't survive that crash. Okay? So we want to understand from you, are there speeding concerns that you have? If you have those concerns, where do you have those concerns along the corridor? So we can do our best job of trying to find solutions to better balance the traffic flow on the corridor and the safety conditions that I think we all want to try to achieve. When we look at the corridor and try to understand how the corridor functions, the most telling set of users that I saw doing my field work was the evidence of how many kids are riding bikes up to the corridor to get on school buses. So every single stop sign is a de facto bus stop for kids that are going to school. In fact, it's so long-standing, I was hugely, neighbors in the community came out and built this bench. The bench has been there for 10 years. It was built with scrap wood, but there's such a demand to accommodate kids that are needing to get to school in the morning. They went and built that bench themselves. That's a piece of infrastructure, that's a community-based piece of infrastructure. Maybe there's a public piece of infrastructure that could be provided to make a more civilized condition. The other takeaway when I looked at this slide, when I looked at these images rather, is the number of training wheels on the bikes that are locked up at the stop sign. So it's not just kids that are going to middle school, right? There's kids that are riding bikes with training wheels, and those kids are going to be riding bikes to the bus stop for the next 10 years. And the wave of buyers that are coming in and residents that are coming in are going to bring more kids that are going to be aging up in the city. And so what we want to hear from you is where their conditions are, where speeding is present, where there are challenges on the roadway network, and the things that you see. You have the best perspective of what's happening because you are the eyes and ears on the ground of how the corridor's functioning. So that's one of the pieces of input that we want you to help us understand tonight. Now, the city has done an extensive effort in trying to understand the needs of all of the members of the traveling public, but particularly understanding the multimodal needs, the bicycling, pedestrian, transit needs in the community. And it's developed a multimodal plan that's also available on the city's website. So for further reading, there are lots of links that are in the presentation for you if you want to better understand the background of the background in the documents. That said, of course, the Port St. Lucie Boulevard corridor at the southern end has a series of improvements the city has identified. There are 4 future transit stops that are identified along the corridor. This process is going to help inform the city's prioritization of when those improvements take place, which ones are the most important ones to you as a community, and help position the city to bring in outside dollars if available to get those improvements constructed. Now, I mentioned earlier in the presentation, the city's already gone through an extensive effort to develop a roadway widening plan for Port St. Lucie Boulevard. You know that's already underway in one section. There are 4 phases to that project. This schedule is available also on the city's website. First phase underway, second phase is to follow as funding becomes available. Ultimately, by 2028, which in the planning world is not a long distance, it sounds like a long time. In the planning world, that's actually pretty near term. So within about a 6-year time frame, if funding is available, the entire corridor will be improved. The design conceptually is a 4-lane section, maintaining the median in the center and adding 10-foot multi-use paths along either side. So if you're a cyclist, the place to be is going to be in the multi-use path out of the travel lanes. That's a decision that's already been made. Pardon me. There's the opportunity to add street trees along the corridor and lighting to improve it both from a functional standpoint and an aesthetic standpoint. So this is kind of the base condition. Beyond that, there are other improvements to complete the street. And so what we want you to help us understand tonight is, do you have priorities for other amenities with the roadway improvement as it happens over time? For example, do you want to build a better crosswalk? Crosswalks can exist painted on the corridor. They can have textured asphalt. They can exist with paver blocks. Okay? Crosswalks can be amenitized with curb extensions to make the crosswalk shorter. Gives the pedestrian a place to hide more quickly when the pedestrian's getting out of the flow of traffic. Crosswalks can also be landscaped, as you can see in both of these examples. So you can have a curb extension that's just concrete, or you can have a curb extension that has landscaping as well. If it's designed in its ultimate condition, this type of landscape area can actually also treat stormwater as it gets back into the stormwater system, and it can be a bioswale. So what are your thoughts on crosswalks? What are the types of features you'd like to see affiliated with crosswalks as they're built over time? There's an opportunity to, let me back up for just a moment. I apologize. I missed one of my points with this. In addition to what happens on the roadway itself, the roadway is a corridor that has dozens and dozens of connections with neighborhood streets. So as you help us understand where there are challenges on PSL itself, also help us understand if there are side streets where we have points of conflict. There was a very energetic conversation next door earlier on the roundabout that exists on Tulip, right? So that's one of the locations. You can tell us that again if you didn't have an opportunity to do that next door. But in addition to that, are there side street conflicts where there's a need to take a second look? Do we need to build a better crosswalk in a different location that accesses Port St. Lucie Boulevard? We need to understand that from you. Bulb outs are another measure that are used to traffic calm a corridor, to calm traffic down. And so bulb outs can be used, again, to extend crosswalks, to make the crosswalk distance shorter, and they can be used at intersections to actually neck an intersection down so drivers have to slow down. One of the techniques that's valuable with traffic calming is that if you don't have any other interference, drivers move quickly and they look down the road and they don't see drivers on either side, and there's nothing to suggest that they shouldn't go quickly to get to their destination. So if we do a complete job and complete the street, there's the ability to add traffic calming to slow drivers down. It's not comfortable to go speed through a road that has bulb outs. It's not comfortable to speed through a road that has raised crosswalks, okay? So those are techniques that we want to hear from you tonight. If there's places those things should be added. Pedestrian refuges are another intervention. A pedestrian refuge is where a median is either divided in a particular location in a mid-block condition, or a median is extended and a crosswalk is pushed back, so when a pedestrian crosses the street, there's a place for that pedestrian to have a moment to hide, right? That's a pedestrian refuge. So it is a simple intervention that's becoming more popular. We don't have as many of them in the city today, but it's a technique that is an opportunity, if you want to, integrate into the corridor to make the pedestrian crossing safer, and it gives the pedestrian a chance to take a moment of pause as they cross. Lighted crosswalks are another type of improvement that raise the visibility of pedestrians. And so crosswalks can be lighted with solar lights or electric lights and activated when people cross the crosswalk. So they can be self-activated or they can have a button. It's pretty simple. They light up the crosswalk when the pedestrian is crossing. The pedestrian is visible, the driver's not comfortable. Hopefully that makes for a safer crossing for the pedestrian when they cross. And during the day, they're very simple bollard lights that illuminate at night. Landscaping is another measure that helps complete the street. In the image the city's already developed as its conceptual plan, there's the potential for street trees. So this process is going to hopefully help us get an understanding of, if you want trees, what kind of trees might you want? So shade trees provide a different improvement along the corridor because they actually shade the sidewalk and make it more comfortable. Shade trees can drop the temperature between 10 and 20 degrees, depending on the kind of shade tree coverage that you have. Palms are easier to install, but they don't provide the same shade coverage. And so what we want to hear from you is, what do you want to see out there on the corridor? Is there a type of tree that you like? Is there a corridor that you already know exists that you think is a good example for us to look at? Street lighting, finally, is the other component to think about with respect to the corridor. And so street lighting can exist with a lot of form or a lot of function, right? Like every other amenity that is introduced in a public condition. And so high-level street lights tend to do a very good job of lighting the roadway, but not the sidewalk so much. Lower-level street lights that are pedestrian in scale add additional lighting, whoops, sorry about that, add additional lighting at the pedestrian level. And bollards are also an opportunity to light just the pathway where pedestrians are at night. I went in the wrong direction, my apologies. And this is actually the last piece, which is transit shelters. I mentioned the city's mobility plan identifies 4 transit shelters long-term on the corridor. The city's gone through a process to develop a really beautifully designed transit shelter that's going to become the standard in the city. So this is kind of hot off the press. This is a fairly recent decision. These images illustrate the type of shelter the city is going to be installing. I think there are 7 prototypical ones that will be installed first. And so the theme for those shelters ranges depending on their location. Native animals, I think flora and fauna is the theme in many parts of the city. There are sports themed ones to be installed by the Met Stadium. And so with transit shelters on the horizon, long term, what we'd like to hear from you is what type of shelters, locations might make sense to you, and how can we best access them? In addition to the roadway improvements, the city has actually an award-winning Parks and Recreation Master Plan that identifies trail connections to completely connect the city over time with off-road multimodal paths. So the multimodal path on Port St. Lucie Boulevard is one of those connections. In addition, are there locations off the corridor that we want to highlight and explore to improve the connections for the city's Parks and Rec inventory? Pardon me. In a corridor plan, there's an opportunity to use public investments to create a sense of place. And the city has done a remarkable job in taking transportation facilities like Crosstown Parkway and really dressing it up to create a sense of arrival that's unique to the city. Pardon me. In addition, there are the wraps, of course, for the utility boxes. I think there are 100 now in the city that add public art and really kind of some cool novelty to how the city looks, celebrating local artists. The city's begun installing public art in its roundabouts as well. So there may be locations to add public art along the corridor to create a sense of place. In addition to that, the frontage of private properties particularly gives an opportunity to add public art and amenities. There's already actually an existing great example of recent public art, which is in Simpatico Plaza. And so the city's land development process yielded a nice piece of public art in a plaza right at the northern end of this plaza. Private investments can help make placemaking happen as well. And that's one of the considerations as we think about the redevelopment, the development of properties like particularly the corner of Becker Road and Port St. Lucie Boulevard. And I'll touch on that in a slide in just a moment. Private investments also make for placemaking. And so especially when properties are asking permission for a use that's not permitted, there's an opportunity for the city to encourage a developer to provide public art in a manner that helps create a sense of place and a sense of arrival. All of these images happen to be on private property where the developer, through an exception process, provided public art along the roadway edge to create a sense of place and a sense of arrival. It feels like a public space because it's connected to the sidewalk, but it's actually provided by a private entity and maintained by a private entity as well. And making first impressions with intent is an opportunity that exists for the city with the development of private sites along the corridor, as well as the key canal banks that cut the corridor through its length. The key enhancement locations that exist, again, this is just to orient you, Gatlin Boulevard to the north and Becker Road to the south. And so as we think about the corridor, again, with the availability of private land and public opportunities, there are some key locations to consider. The first entry point to the city from I-95 or from the Turnpike is the corner of Becker and Port St. Lucie Boulevard. So when you've arrived at the city and you're on the road that brings you to City Hall and the road that's named after the city, there's only one Port St. Lucie Boulevard in the city of Port St. Lucie. This is a pretty important location when it comes to how it's developed and how it communicates to folks. They've arrived in a special place. So we would suggest to you perhaps, and you'll tell us if we're right, this is a pretty important location to announce that you've arrived in a place that warrants your attention, okay? The drive home, the road to your driveway, the roadway taking you home is always the driveway to your house, right? And the roadway to your business is always the driveway taking you to your business. So what happens at key intersections like this one is significant. The next key locations along the corridor where we have publicly held land are the two canals. So the E5 and the E84 are pretty substantial canals with large canal banks that are really visible from the corridor. And there are opportunities to modify how those canals look if you want that, if that's a priority to you. The other main locations that are publicly held are the two larger ditches that cross the corridor at Alcantara and near Jig, I believe, is the southern end. So what do those canal banks look like? The E5 is a fairly substantial canal. It's part of the city's stormwater master plan. The canal bank is lined by single-family residential on the north side, but on the south side of the canal, there's actually private commercial uses that exist on the southwest corner. Okay. With respect to land development opportunity, this is a fairly sizable holding along a corridor that doesn't have a lot of other private land along it. So if improving the aesthetic of the roadway is a priority, this is an opportunity to explore from a planning standpoint as to other visual characteristics that could exist along the corridor. It's very functional. It's a very functional canal bank, but it doesn't have perhaps the amenities that could be there. For example, this is about a 5-acre parcel that exists along the canal bank on the southwest side. And if you were to connect it back over to Darwin, it actually connects to another parcel. It's about a 3-acre parcel along that pond that creates perhaps a little, I don't know, maybe a recreational opportunity if that's something that is desirable to the city. The E84 Canal is also a very substantial canal bank at the southern end. Again, it's a very functional condition, a functional canal in its present condition. but it has the opportunity to provide a different aesthetic along the corridor if that's a desire. The two ditches along the corridor, again, both very functional, but have opportunities for other landscape improvements, perhaps, to help dress the corridor a bit. The fourth canal being the fourth ditch being the one that is along McCoy. What are the kinds of things that can happen when you have a stormwater improvement? Well, there are stormwater parks that are formed with stormwater facilities. This is actually a stormwater pond in downtown Fort Pierce that was identified for some other things to happen. So instead of having a stormwater pond along the water, through mostly grant funding, this park was improved with landscaping in the form of bioswales that clean the stormwater and some hardscape improvements to create a place where there was no place before. Stormwater parks can have different forms and different sizes. The main function of stormwater facilities is to collect, clean, and discharge stormwater. That's always the primary function, but you don't have to end with that. Right? A stormwater facility can do other things like create something that's more landscaped and feels more recreational. Bioswales are a technique that can be used along stormwater facilities. So bioswales are specifically designed with plant materials that clean stormwater more effectively. The plant materials can exist at marshy, submerged, or on the upland. Canal banks are a prime location where bioswales are particularly effective because they also help prevent erosion of canal banks. So you get a landscape amenity, you get a stormwater improvement, and you get a visual amenity along the corridor if that's a desire. Rain gardens are another technique that can be used. So rain gardens are, again, landscape improvements that are designed specifically with plants that can survive in marshy and submerged conditions. And they actually maintain themselves. They live on the pollutants that come into the stormwater system, and so that actually provides a fertilizer for them to survive. The other opportunities that could exist along the canal are shared use paths. The canal bank, again, it's about I think it's about a 4.5 acre parcel that exists right there along just south of Gatlin. And so if it's a priority, we can help the city understand whether or not a shared use path might be appropriate there. The other opportunity that you have is perhaps a fitness trail or some type of recreational improvement along the corridor. The city's done a beautiful job on Crosstown Parkway with the fitness trail that exists there. It's got water fountains, it's got a couple of pavilions there. It's not really convenient walking distance to the type of population density that you have along Port St. Lucie Boulevard, so it might be a very efficient location to include something like fitness facilities or other recreational facilities if that's a desire in a location like that one. The other thing to think about is celebrating key intersections. And I mentioned the intersection of Port St. Lucie Boulevard and Becker Road as a primary location for your consideration. The city actually did a master plan with the Regional Planning Council about 15 years ago and developed an overlay zone for Becker Road. And in that process, what we heard from residents, and it wasn't as developed back then, but what we heard from residents was we really want to make sure when people get to the city of Port St. Lucie, they know they've come to the city. They've arrived in a place. And this is going to be the main intersection for people coming off I-95 and ultimately off the Turnpike, because the Turnpike was just getting ready to happen. And so what residents told the commissioners back then was, pay attention to this corridor and do something special with this location in particular. You don't have another location like it. What we know from a design standpoint is the wider the distance between buildings face to building face, the faster drivers tend to go. So if buildings are set fairly close to the street, for example, in a 1-to-3 ratio, 1 foot of height to 3 feet of width, the street feels more contained. Drivers don't feel comfortable speeding in that condition. They tend to slow down. But the further buildings are set back, the wider the distance is from face to face, well, the more comfortable it feels to go quickly. So what we heard from folks in that process was, don't have buildings set back from one another such that people want to speed when they come down Port St. Lucie Boulevard. We've got families living here. Bring buildings closer to the street so when people come off those interstates, they don't feel like they should stay at interstate speed and go down Port St. Lucie Boulevard, but they should slow down because they're coming into a neighborhood. One of the other ways that private properties help complete the street is where driveways are located. So we have different examples of how driveway conditions exist along the corridor today. These are all examples of what's on the corridor today. The townhouses I mentioned earlier, they're at the southern end by McCord, have side-loaded parking and the driveways are on the side. So these 10 units exist with no additional driveway coming out to Port St. Lucie Boulevard. That's a consideration. Is this a good format or a format that doesn't make sense? You let us know. There are locations along the corridor where we have buildings fronting the street with parking to the rear. So the parking is not on the side, but the parking is actually behind the building. It's located in a way so that this use, again, has a side street driveway, not a driveway coming out to the street. That's an opportunity to think about as well. That's a condition. Or there's a more traditional suburban condition, let's say. This is a little further up the corridor, where we have the parking in front of the building and an extra driveway to get back in here to the residential. So there's a street on one side and there's an extra driveway immediately to the other. That's another way uses can land on the ground. Let us know, what do you think is the right combination for uses as they come in, and particularly, how should we think about that intersection at the southern end? One of the things we know, of course, is there's gas stations want to come into the city, and there's a demand. With 215,000 people in the city, there's a need to buy a lot of gas. There's not a lot of gas stations when you get from Gatlin south and get to the interstate. So there's a desire for gas stations to come in at that intersection. When the city adopted the Becker Road Master Plan, it had the wisdom to say, we're going to retain a set of uses and not permit drive-throughs and not permit gas stations along this corridor. We don't want it to break down. And so the city has all the control in the conversation if gas stations want to come in that location. It has to come in through a special approval process. There are different ways gas stations can land on the ground. So we wanted to give you some of that background so you have that to think about as you help us understand what makes sense on the corridor. There's kind of what we'd refer to as a highway design. That's like a traditional gas station design where the gas station building is at the back of the lot and all of the edges of the lot are dedicated to getting people in and out and the fuel canopies. That's one way to arrange a gas station. There's also a more neighborhood-focused design that reverses that. In fact, sometimes it's called a reverse gas station, which is a confusing term, but nonetheless, what it does is it reverses where the building is and where the fuel canopy is. So instead of welcoming folks along the corridor, where'd my clicker go? There we go. Instead of welcoming folks along the corridor with parking and fuel canopy, that alternative design welcomes folks with a building set against the street to help, again, bring down the width between properties across the street, locates the fuel canopies to the back. And so that's an opportunity if there's a desire to have a gas station in that location. There's different ways a gas station can be located. Examples of those two things. This is the Wawa, not picking on Wawa, it's just the image I found, which is at Prima Vista. So that's kind of the more highway-focused design. It's a 6-lane road. Cars are moving pretty quickly. The gas station is located at the back of the lot. What meets you along the street is parking and fuel canopy. A lot of lighting affiliated with that, of course. And so the alternative design, like the neighborhood-focused design, actually is just built over in Palm City. This is in Martin County. This is a Sunoco building. In that alternative design, this is a 4-lane road. That building was set at the street. The canopy set at the rear. Happens to be a corner, so the canopy is visible from one street, but the decision was protect this interior street, this one's called Map Road, and ensure that if this use is going to occur, it treats the street in the neighborhood fashion as it's designed. It's the A street in an AB street network. So something to think about. If a gas station is appropriate, yes or no? And if a gas station is appropriate, what kind of form might a gas station most appropriately take to announce that sense of arrival to the city of Port St. Lucie? The city actually developed a series of plans to better understand how a gas station might exist at this intersection. So these are concept drawings that were developed for the city simply to understand if different uses were to occur there, how might they most appropriately land on the ground. And so what this plan, this concept does, again, not a proposal, just a concept for the city to test how uses might occur in this location. What this concept explores is if those gas station or drive-through type uses were to occur, how can we best treat this intersection so you actually know you've arrived somewhere and you're not speeding off the interstate, let's say, and then speeding down the road. One of the concepts that had a lot of positive feedback was the idea of reserving the corners for public art and public plazas. There's an opportunity to say, welcome to Port St. Lucie. Here is the public art to welcome you. Here is the signage to welcome you to the city. Those buildings being located along Becker Road, and the parking and automotive uses being located behind them. So again, a concept for your feedback, if you will, a larger view of that plan, and then kind of a concept drawing of what that might look like. We wanted to understand how that might position itself. This site is actually a site, if you're aware, that has a developer interested in building. Again, not a recommendation for this, but ideas for your feedback. If a gas station were to be located, for example, at this corner of Becker Road and Port St. Lucie Boulevard, one way it could be located, perhaps, that balances those different priorities, completing the street, making a safer condition, and creating a sense of place, would be to provide a plaza at the corner with public art, pull the building up to the street, put the canopy behind it. So when you enter the city in this location, you're greeted by building, and you're greeted by art, and you're not greeted by parking and fuel canopy, okay? And so just some images to illustrate how that might look, again, if it is a desire in the community. As we consider traffic calming and safe ways to cross the street, pedestrians have a buffer from the large volume of traffic that makes the turn at Port St. Lucie Boulevard onto Becker Road. And so pedestrians have an opportunity to be buffered from the traffic that takes place. This sidewalk actually, because Becker's traffic volumes have increased so substantially and the speed of traffic has increased so substantially, this sidewalk really is a sidewalk that exists, but it's not really as functional as a sidewalk would want to be. So the concept suggests maybe a second sidewalk is the way to really accommodate folks that are traveling along the corridor. And that sidewalk could be located behind landscaping to buffer that sidewalk and make it a safer condition. And you can see that is suggested in both directions. There we go, a view of what a ground view perspective of that type of use might look, again, if this is a desire. And then how it looks when you drive down the road that takes you to City Hall. So ideas for your consideration. I want to take a pause for a moment and ask Laura if you can take a look at the chat messages. Make sure we don't have any comments that should be addressed before we get into discussion.
Thank you, Kim.
Yep.
We have a couple of comments in chat right now about if we were aware of the Becker Road overlay. I believe Dr. Delaney addressed some of the items relating to the Becker Road overlay. And then also one comment was, I like many of the suggestions in the presentation, but with all the single-family houses with driveways on PSL Boulevard, I'm having a hard time understanding where you will find space for a 4-divided lane with mediums and special crosswalks. So those are a couple of the comments right now.
Okay, super. So we'll talk about, let's touch on both of those. So the Becker Road overlay, as I mentioned, for the folks on Zoom and the folks in the room, is a plan the city developed with the Regional Planning Council's assistance about 15 years ago. It exists on the city's website. The city implemented that plan with an overlay zone. That overlay zone prohibits gas stations and it prohibits drive-through facilities being developed on Becker Road. There's desire, as I mentioned, for folks to build particularly gas stations in that location. The city's kind of trying to understand if that's going to happen, how can that best work? And so there are some images in the presentation that have come from that effort, which is parallel but a little outside of the corridor study, okay? The other question was, with all the single-family residential, how can the roadway be accommodated in that dimension?
Yeah, the question was targeting, you know, with the single-family homes that abut Port St. Lucie Boulevard, where is there room to provide for this kind of cross-section?
Right. A tricky question, because the answer is the right-of-way exists at a 100-foot dimension, and a number of the driveways that are constructed to meet the road where it is today will have to be modified when the road is widened and the publicly held land that has been acquired for the purpose of widening the road is then used for that purpose. Okay, so that's the answer on that one. Let me just jump forward to, oh, I'm sorry, I'm hitting the wrong thing. There we go. Okay, so that's a lot of information. I know it's drinking from a fire hose, especially when I'm at the podium. So my apologies, there's so much information to cover. But there are a lot of pieces to making a corridor plan that makes sense for the community. So we wanted to give you some things to think about so we can get feedback from you with as much information as we can. And this isn't the only chance to give us your input. So this is a long-term process. There's a second workshop that'll happen. My email contact information, and also Laura, who's the project manager's contact info, phone numbers, and email in the presentation, and we're available for your feedback. If you can, if you have your phone handy, there's a couple of survey questions. I want to get some feedback from you about how the corridor functions, and then we'll get into the discussion, okay? So the first one of those, how often do you visit businesses on the Port St. Lucie Boulevard corridor? How often do you visit the businesses that are there today? Okay, if you're living along the corridor. Do you visit them every day? You go maybe once a week or so?
Are you talking about just the section south of Gatlin?
Gatlin to Becker. Just what's out there from Gatlin to Becker. Thank you for that clarifier. So for that 3.5-mile section that we're focused on, how often do you use the businesses that are on the corridor? Okay, you're a resident in the community, I'm presuming. So daily, weekly, monthly, a couple times a year maybe I go up there. I only go up there if there's a special occasion, or I really never go. So we just want to get an idea of how those businesses correspond to what residents are looking for. So, pardon me. So I'll go ahead and give you 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And survey says a lot of activity. About 75% of the people responding, about 75% go daily or weekly. So they're really serving a local community need. Our sense is that's the case. There's not a lot of vacancies on the corridor. We have a lot of retail vacancies in the region. There are not a lot of retail vacancies along that corridor. So those uses tend to be pretty well subscribed, and not surprising, local residents use them because they're right there. Avi, by the way, how many people are on Zoom, just out of curiosity?
40.
Okay, just trying to get an idea of how many people are participating. Okay, super. And just a couple of people rarely or never go. So I don't think that's really a surprising thing, but I just wanted to get an idea of how the corridor is getting used. Let's go on to the next slide. Number 8, I walk, bike, or roll, meaning I'm not taking my car, but I'm using some other mode that's a multimodal mode. I walk, bike, or roll to businesses on the corridor daily, once a week, once a month, maybe on a weekend recreationally, only if a car is not available or I never access the corridor in a mode other than my car. So give us an idea. This is a mobility question. How often do you get up there? So we'll go with 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Go ahead, Avi. Okay. So the only reason 13% of the respondents would go is if a car is unavailable and no one else who's responding ever walks up to that corridor. So that's a telling piece of information, okay? So you have a lot of uses that people are using daily or weekly that are right next to houses, and because it's too hot is an explanation, or because it doesn't feel right, you tell us, or because you don't have a desire, right, to walk up to the corridor, it doesn't happen. But it's an opportunity to explore, we would suggest as your planners, okay? So, that's good information. go to the next slide. We only have 2 more of these. If you had a magic wand, which mobility improvements would you prioritize on the corridor? Just want to get an idea of what feels the most, like the best thing to put out there. Would you improve the crosswalks? Would you have better lighting? Would you enhance the landscaping? Would you put in those pedestrian median refuges? Would you have bike share or scooter share? Would you do all of the above, or would you do something else, including nothing? So something else includes nothing. So why don't we just give us a little bit of feedback. So we have 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Go ahead, Avi. Okay, half the people responding said do all of it. And otherwise, majority saying something else, which could be don't do anything out there. So that is a catch-all. This is not scientific survey data, by the way. And then a mix, crosswalks, lighting, landscaping. So we want to talk about that in detail when we get to the discussion in just a minute, okay? I think, so it's aspirational. So number 10, the canal banks along the corridor. They should be not changed and remain exactly as they are. They should be improved with landscaping and pathways, maybe as small parks, or we should do something else with those canals. So do nothing, improve them in some way, or do something that you'll tell us about, either through chat or through discussion today, all right? So we'll go with 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Avi? Improved as small parks seems popular. About half the people participating, and about half the people like landscaping and pathways. Okay, so that gives us something to work with. We're going to talk about that in more detail, but we wanted to get some ideas because we're in the dark. So, so that's good to know. A couple of people said don't change them, leave them as they are. And one person said just with landscaping. So the majority of people would like to see something out there. That's what it seems like based on the people responding. So good information. I think it's the last survey question. Which of these gateway features are the most important to welcome people onto PSL Boulevard? Okay, which are the ones that are the most important, that you think are the most important ones? Landscaping, lighting, signage, the appearance of buildings, public art, all of them, or something else, including nothing. Nothing should be done as a gateway. So give us an idea. So we have 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. What did we get on that one? All of them. Okay. All of them seems to be the popular choice tonight. And that is a good thing, because if you're going to improve those gateways, the city has all the leverage in that conversation, which is really remarkable. And a mix otherwise. Landscaping, one person with lighting, a couple with signage, and 2 with building appearance. So, okay. And I don't think anyone picked the something else, which is don't do anything. So, so that's good information. So, we want to get into a discussion now with you, both through chat for the folks that are in Zoom and for the folks in the room. Pardon me. So we have a couple of questions for you to think about and give us your feedback, okay? So I'm going to walk through a couple of questions, and then what we're going to do is actually turn the PowerPoint into a recording mechanism and write down the things that we hear from you, okay? So the discussion questions to think about. And there is no answer that's a bad answer, by the way. It's an open conversation. So what are your thoughts on the future of PSL Boulevard South? What do you think about the corridor? How do you think the city should complete the street? Okay, we know the city's going to widen it. We know the city's going to put in 10-foot paths on either side. What else should be done? Is that enough? Or are there other things you want the city to look at to complete the street? We're getting there in a moment. Hang on, we're coming to you. So, are there missing connections? Or are there missing amenities, which is why nobody seems to walk up to Port St. Lucie Boulevard, even though they're going every day or once a week, right? So are there missing connections to walk or to ride your bike or to ride your scooter, roll your wheelchair, or take a stroller, get up there, ride your one board? Are we missing connections, or are we missing facilities? That's created that disconnect, okay? And I'll put these back up again if we need them, but these are the kind of the teasers for you to kind of fill us in about. what are the types and styles of buildings that are the best fit for the roadway? So there's actually Dana Little, who's the urban design director, who's going to be helping us through the conversation, reminded me FPNL has a right tree, right place approach, right? There's the right kind of building that's the right kind of fit in certain locations. Tell us if you have an idea of what that might be. How do you want the corridor to look? What are the uses? You think of the right uses up there. So, are there other communities that have good examples that we should look to? There are other places where you're like, you know what, I wish we had this kind of road here. I wish we had this kind of sidewalk or this kind of stormwater improvement. So if there's other places we should look at, please tell us, because we want to do that. So, what are the best locations for enhancements? Called out, the canal banks are there. That corner at Becker and PSL is there. You have a couple of ditches. What are the ones that feel like the best ones to you? How should the city improve the look and feel of the road? So, and then finally, do you have other thoughts? Are there other things that we should be thinking about how this roadway can better serve you guys as the residents who live here? So with that, as you can see, my discussion notes slide popped up. It's like magic when you run presentations like this. So I'm going to just, why don't we ask the room? Actually, there's one question on Zoom, if you don't mind. There's one in the Q&A. What did we get in the Q&A?
Yeah, the question in Q&A is, I'm concerned about the taxes going, I believe that's up, as this is not funded yet.
Okay, and that's something that we want to communicate to the council members. So the city has funding. It's already programmed to widen a portion of the road. It's seeking additional funding to widen the other portions of the road. There are actually grant dollars available for bicycle and pedestrian improvements. There are grant dollars available for stormwater improvements. And so the city can leverage its dollars with other funds to improve the corridor if that's a desire. Okay? Why don't we go around the room and ask you guys to tell us what you think. So
Sure.
we'll start over here. Okay?
Real fast, I'm going to go ahead and introduce Jordan, our intern. Today is actually his first day with the planning
Jordan.
department. So if you get the opportunity, tell him he made a good choice. And Jordan's going to just walk around and take some of your questions. He'll ask your question and repeat it if necessary.
And I think we have an elected official that's joined us, by the way. So Commissioner Caraballo has joined us tonight. So thank you, Commissioner, for joining us.
Okay.
Pardon?
So,
Oh, I'll get to Bob.
our first question over here. State your name and your question.
Hi, I'm Bob McDonald. You're only going to widen Port St. Lucie Boulevard to 4 lanes, 2 in each direction. How soon will it be widened to 3 lanes in each direction? Because that's going to happen.
Right. So the
Because
4-lane.
Port St. Lucie Boulevard on the other side of Gatlin is 6 lanes, 3 in each direction.
Right.
And what we're looking at now is 4 lanes, 2 in each direction.
Right.
How soon before it's going to go to 6? And why not do 6 right away?
Okay. So the right-of-way exists to accommodate a 4-lane extension. And as the corridor has been developed over time, the amount of residential that lines that corridor would be very challenging to acquire to expand the right-of-way necessary for that road to be widened beyond 4 lanes. That's my impression. Laura, is there additional engineering information with respect to the widening? Because I know that's already a project in motion with the city.
Thank you, Jordan. So that is correct. So there's a lot of details associated with that kind of question. And I would encourage you to contact us directly and we can go over it with the Public Works Department because there's a lot of design and construction associated with this corridor that I think the background information would be important in answering your question.
Let me say one more thing. When Bob Mensky was the mayor, Gatlin Boulevard, which was back in the day was called Savage, was 2 lanes. And he pushed very hard to get Gatlin, Savage changed to Gatlin, and make it a 6-lane road. I know the city 6 because it's cheaper now, and if we do it later, it's just gonna be more congestion, and he says, and the 6 lanes will be used. If you go down Gatlin Boulevard, any time of the day or night, imagine if it was only 4 lanes.
Well noted. And let me get your contact information before you leave, because I think this is going to be a more extended and technical discussion that I'd like to have with a public works representative as well, because our roadways are based upon level of service and capacity, and I would very much rather our engineering department and the planning department sit down with you to answer that question. Thank you.
All right. Go on, Jordan. And Jordan gets a workout on
There you go.
Now, you didn't know you got a workshop and a workout. That's a double.
My name's Rudy Howard. One of the things I think is of critical importance is that on that southern part of Gatlin, that you build housing in the $200,000 range,
Okay.
so that it is affordable for the younger people to stay within the community, because I think it's imperative for the community to be strong, to be able to keep the families together.
Okay.
So that should be afforded an opportunity over there.
Okay. And the location for that, you think, is the southern end of that corridor?
Yes,
Okay.
closer toward Becker.
Closer to Becker. Okay. Trying
Yeah.
to hit about a $200,000 price point.
I'd like to see it in the 200,000 area.
Okay.
So 200 to 250. Let's get below 250 so we can make some housing that's affordable for young families
Got it.
to raise their families here.
Okay. Thank you.
You only have one question? I have a lot.
It's okay.
Okay,
We're here for questions and input, so
all right.
don't be shy. I don't seem to think, my takeaway is not, this is a shy community. This is not a shy, there are communities that are shy. Shy is not one of the things I think about when I think about city. Please.
Okay, I'm Diane Goldberg. I'm the Conservation Chair for St. Lucie Audubon, and I'm also here for Conservation Alliance of St. Lucie County. I see where you have the residents on St. Lucie Boulevard, but I think it's going to end up as you have the 4 lanes and lots of traffic, that it will convert like Prima Vista into commercial. And that's probably the way I would imagine it will go, that the city would arrange for them to be able to sell to commercial entities so that it would be all commercial, because it's not the kind of street people need to really live on. But you talked about businesses on Port St. Lucie Boulevard, and to tell you the truth, I don't think you mentioned anything. They're all low-wage businesses, businesses. I'm looking for what kind of businesses that will be high-wage for our residents. I don't know what things that you're talking about that's going to be other than small grocery stores and shops and restaurants and gas stations, and they all pay low wage. I would like to know if this project will have their own taxing district to pay for the infrastructure for all of this. I want to know, where will you get the drinking water for all the new growth in this area, as well as, fresh water, and as well as will you be building a water treatment plant over McCartney Ranch to handle the increased sewage and stormwater needs in a way that won't send any of the pollution to our river or lagoon, which happens now every time we have our rainy season and the heavy rains. The water from, all of that, whether it runs into canals or the storm drains, they end up going down to the river and lagoon. So I feel that this is a problem that we have to look into. And will you perhaps think about looking into the use of sewage to make electricity, to run the sewage plant instead of, since now is the time to do it, since we do have federal and state funding that will pay for such an expensive project like that. There's not going to be money coming in after, this, upcoming times. So now's the time to check. You showed lots of pictures, some of them quite nice with bioswales and planting rain gardens, but you also showed even more pictures of landscaping with lawns, which is so detrimental for pollution runoff. We would like to see more native ground covers, shrubs, and trees. And if you check the University of Florida's website, you'll find they have the new program of firescaping, where you don't put the shrubs against the buildings, that they're out in the middle of the landscape area instead. You use fewer palm trees, but you certainly aren't going to put oaks on the streets as street trees, because then they seem to buckle the roads and sidewalks, and then you're ending up taking them out. So, there are proper trees that would be good for shade, and I suggest we talk more about not just Florida-friendly plants, but actual native plants, because you will find that even Florida-friendly do get stressed out by insects that are not common to them, and do want fertilizer because they're not from Florida. But when you use the natives in the places that would be correct for them, then you'll find that they don't need any of the fertilizers. And we don't want the pesticides used because we need the insects, because they are part of the food web and are needed by our wildlife. And they poison our drinking water as well as our waterways. So I would be glad to help you with some of these suggestions if you'll contact me. Thank you.
That would be great. So thank you for that input. And I do want to follow up with you to get a clear understanding of all the Florida-friendly opportunities that we have for landscaping. Yes. With respect to wages and jobs, completely concur with your concern that jobs along the corridor are more neighborhood commercial oriented. They are more service sector by default. The higher wage jobs the city is trying to secure, and is securing them actually, are in the Southern Grove jobs corridor, west of I-95. But we definitely want to note that as a concern. So, and thank you for the emphasis on Florida-friendly materials. So that's one of the things that we want to get feedback about. What types of landscaping do you want to see? Sounds like Florida-friendly landscaping. That's going to be the appropriate landscaping in that place. So, so that's helpful, very helpful. Thank you. So, yes.
Oh, Kim, if I may just catch up a little bit in chat on some of the comments. I think it's important to point out some of the comments that we're receiving in chat so everyone knows, kind of the individuals using this corridor. So some individuals are saying, I use this corridor daily, and the most needed is walkways and sidewalks. Unfortunately, mishaps and injuries have already happened. Other individuals are saying people in my neighborhood walk and bike a lot to the corner stores. They're missing connections to walk and bike.
Okay.
Another comment is that benches would be nice, or also small shops such as coffee, bakery, etc. Jordan?
Edgar Copeman. Two things I wanted to note. One, the bump outs where basically you pop off from the side to try and slow down traffic. My old city used to do that, and they got rid of them within like 2 years because they had like $200,000 worth of lawsuits based on like busted rims, busted wheels, and a lady died.
Okay.
Like there were injuries. It did not go like anyone's expectations. I'm going from my own personal experience, and also as a civil engineer, like I've talked with the people who actually have dealt with this in other cities. Sometimes they work out okay or marginally well. Other times they actually cause a massive cost on the neighborhoods, especially on like commuters and that sort of stuff. Like it just does not go well. And the second thing I wanted to talk about was I noticed on one of the photos you were showing of one of the bus stops, you were showing the seats all separated by like iron, by like the steel bars separating them.
Yep.
That's actually an example of, well, hazardous or harmful public space. The main reason is like it's not just like, it's theoretically useful, but it's also just, it makes it harder for someone to live there. Like it makes it harder for someone to be there. It's a sort of an additional issue for the area. Because like in certain areas, certain cities like in New York or Chicago, some of them set up these things to prevent homeless people from just squatting there. Sometimes they put up spikes on the underpasses to prevent that sort of stuff. Sometimes it's just setting up these like separated benches. All these things are just, they actually make the living conditions for the area worse. Like they might reduce the amount of homeless people in the area, but like say you have someone who's a bit overweight. Like for some of those things, like they might be like 4 feet wide. I know some guys who are like 5 or 6, and they could not sit there. They take public transportation, and that's an issue. Like some of these guys just cannot fit there. And it's like in New York, there was this big issue. An old guy, he tripped. Now, if he fell over onto like a normal sidewalk, he would have been like perfectly fine, maybe some bruises. But he landed on some of the spikes. Old guy got crippled. Like, that's just an issue. Like, some of these guys are retirement to people. Like, most of these guys are maybe in their 50s, 60s, 80s. Like, if they're in their 90s and they're running down, they're going to die if they trip and fall into some, like, this more hazardous, hazardous, helpful spots. Like, they might be nice, but some of them, they just add on to an additional issue. Like,
Yeah. Well,
that's just
there
my
are no
big issue.
spikes that were suggested in any of the improvements. So, and thank you for the feedback on transit accommodations to make sure that they can accommodate all the users. Yeah. That's a county standard that the city has already absorbed, I think, but we'll be sure to communicate that to them. So, might be some folks in the back.
Hi, I'm Tim Fuller. The things that I want to talk about is not just the corridor of Port St. Lucie Boulevard, but the side streets that feed off of it already, where I live on Idle Avenue, that we get 50-mile-an-hour speeds down a 30-mile-an-hour limit street because it feeds from Savona all the way to Port St. Lucie Boulevard.
Which
and things like
that. Which road is that one?
Idle, Southwest Idle.
Okay.
But there's other streets on the other side of Port St. Lucie Boulevard is the same way.
Okay.
The other parts is that the houses that are being built there right now are very close to the places that you're talking about that are good development areas, just south of Gig, north of Yamada, and that whole area there. When you widen this, luckily, some of the houses have already been built with a circular driveway, but even with the circular driveway, they may not be able to pull out of their garage without being on the sidewalks and everything. And that's already built in, so that's another problem we've built for ourselves again that we need to stop.
It's a challenge.
Okay? The other parts is the schools there. I used to be the board chairman for Imagine Now, that's now Somerset Academy. The traffic on that to get them in and out in the mornings on Gig, which is a very short little street, it's a nightmare. And getting out at night is even worse. So there's a lot of things that we have to look at other than just saying, oh, we're going to make this nice 4-lane road with the sidewalks and the bike lanes and all this. Because I sat through a bunch of these meetings the last time we did this, okay? And we all wanted the bike paths and we all wanted the sidewalks and things like that. But now that they're building these houses right there, I think we're tying our hands before we should. And then there's other things too, like stop and go signals, okay? The school wanted to talk about putting one in for Gig. Well, Gig is just off of Becker Road, not too far. So that's not going to happen, or shouldn't happen. So there has to be other things about the other routings around there, because you've also got the high school up that Tulip feeds back out onto Port St. Lucie Boulevard, okay? Not Tulip at Gatlin, but the southern circle of it, okay? And the high school's there. And so there's a lot of traffic things that are already built in that 4-lane highway isn't going to solve.
Okay.
So there has to be other things like that. And that's one of the biggest, I used to sit on planning and zoning commissions up in Illinois. You guys are doing a great job with this thing, okay? And, I've got some other things, but we'll let somebody else talk because I think Bob wants to say something, right?
Okay. Are there other particular roadways that are of concern? You mentioned Idle as one of the roads. Are there other folks with roadways of particular concern?
Alcantara is just the same.
Alcantara?
And it's the straight shot across, okay?
Okay.
The streets that are now back behind where Darwin and Port St. Lucie, and you've got the 2 gas stations and 3 gas stations and the McDonald's and stuff. That road's now starting to get more traffic back into the neighborhoods that there's nothing for people to go to. In fact, half those roads you can't get out of there once you get there. Okay. So there's just a lot of things like that are necessary. And in long-term planning, we have to look at all the issues that we've got. Right. Okay.
And we want to look at the network that feeds the road and figure out where are the key problems that are concerns for you guys as residents.
Even we got the city provided sidewalks down Idle 5 years ago, 6 years ago, something like that, and the kids are still not riding their bikes to school and stuff because it's 50 miles an hour. And
Idle and Alcantara in particular.
Yeah.
I want to make sure
those are the two that I know the best, but there's probably more. Okay.
I see this young lady in the back nodding her head on the side. The road's needing attention.
Good evening. My name's Robert DeRocher, and I live nearby Gatlin and Darwin. Certainly, we'd like to see the canals dressed up a little bit better than they are. One of my concerns is since that's a major thoroughfare, going to the highway, getting around the city. I'm glad that we have it, but and it seems like we're committed to 4 lanes. Are we going to have room for the sidewalks, the bike lanes, and the parking, and the landscaping that we all want to see on that road? Yeah. The lots are narrow with the houses there now. I'm surprised that the city is allowing people to build houses there knowing we're going to be expanding all that.
I think they're platted lots of record, so they have the right to develop, right? So those property rights can't be taken away. So those are folks that are building with knowledge that there's a 100-foot right-of-way that is a public right-of-way for the road, and that road is going to be improved over time. But there's a there's a property right that exists for those owners where the city can't
We don't have room for what we want to do there?
prevent the development of the home.
For 4 lanes, it's 100 feet.
But the right-of-way exists, public right-of-way exists for the expansion of the road. And that right-of-way can accommodate 4 lanes, can accommodate multi-use paths, what's conceptualized as 10-foot multi-use paths on both sides. So the bike lanes wouldn't be in the road. The bike lanes would be behind landscaping and at a 10-foot dimension, which is pretty good. 2 bikes can pass each other in 10 feet. That's kind of a good standard.
Those
Right?
are concerns that I have,
Okay, thank you for that.
because it looks tight there now.
Again, in the back, Jordan? And coming back around again, I know you've been waiting for a while in the back there too.
That's all right. Yeah, I've been in the area for about 30 years. I live on a little 1,340 square foot long street, McCoy Avenue, which comes right off the boulevard. And there's 5 other ingress, egress into the area behind, our street in that neighborhood back there. But we get, oh, good grief, probably up to 1,000 cars a day using that street instead of the other 5 streets from the residents back there. Average speed in 2015 speed study was 35 miles an hour. 2019 was 36 miles an hour. We get these young kids that come off the boulevard and punch it, coming around. We have elderly people trying to walk with walkers, kids trying to play. It's a residential area. I would hope that it would never go beyond the 4 lanes. And I love the sidewalk and the pathway area because you cannot walk. I've tried, you see mothers trying to push their strollers on what's there now. You're getting glass on you, there's condoms, there's drug stuff. So it's got to get cleaned up.
On the street that you're mentioning, which is McCoy?
McCoy Avenue, Southwest McCoy.
Is there a need for any interventions to slow the speeds down?
I've begged the city since 2015. We did the petitions and everything. Oh, nothing we can do. There's nothing we can do.
Okay, well, we'll take a look at it.
I guess it's going to take that.
There are new ideas that have come around over. There are new interventions that are introduced all the time.
It's just it is a residential area. Unfortunately, we hear it all night now for the past couple of years. It's Port St. Lucie Speedway around the Darwin area. These little fart cars and kids, vroom, 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 were calling for help every night from the police department. I don't know if maybe in District 3, tradition is more popular than we are, but we want the same attention from the police department to try to stop this stuff. I just want it to stay in mind that it's a residential area. There's nothing out there that people need to haul butt to get to. No bars or nothing like that. Just, it's a residential area. Slow down. I think 35 miles an hour would be perfect for the area there. Everybody averages about...
For PSL Boulevard. 35, perfect for PSL.
Everybody
but not
averages,
the side streets.
Right. Oh, yeah, no, side streets, I would like 20. I know they're finally doing it at 25.
And that would be more consistent with traffic engineering. Traffic engineering would say 35 on the main commercial road, 20 on the residential street.
Everybody averages, the sign says 40. Nah, they average 5, 10 over. They do what feels good, and it's dangerous out there.
Okay.
We just want more help, that's all.
Okay. Take you in the back over there, Jordan.
Hi, I'm Liz Gardner. I live at the northeast corner of PSL and the corridor and Becker. My son is one of the ones that waits at the bus there, that you probably took a picture of the bus stop. I've been really vocal online, and a lot of other parents, that's a horrible place to have a bus stop. I would really like the city to work with the district, the school district, with their transportation. If you leave Darwin area and you head south on the corridor, anytime after 3:30, it's going to take you multiple times to get through any of those lights. And you've got all those bus stops also. But if we have the stop and go, a lot of the bus stops drop you off on the west side, and then my kids have to cross the street. That's not safe. Nobody's walking from my neighborhood up to, and We're a young family. We eat pizza at the Little Caesars all the time. So we're there weekly, but I would never send my kids walking up that road. No way. Not when they're doing 40, 50, 60 miles an hour.
So let me use that as a question, right? What would it take to make you feel safe as a parent?
Well, I definitely love what's going to happen with the sidewalks and all of that.
Okay.
I would like to see some fishing areas. I mean, come on, this is Florida. My 20-year-old, my son, he has to drive 30, 40 minutes to find a place to fish because the little places don't have any fish. The new park that's coming in Tradition, I hear there's going to be a fishing place there. That'd be great. Put a little place so they, a little parking area so we can, have a little fishing area. That'd be great. Another thing I think is important is we're a commuter town. Like it said, a lot of the people that live here don't work here, but we need to keep our money here in Port St. Lucie. And there's so many young families that are moving to the area because it's cheap, but they're not staying here for the weekend. They're going to Orlando, they're going south, they're taking their families elsewhere, and if we make it a more friendly neighborhood, so a mom can walk down the street to a little park like the Woodland Trails Park. If she can walk her kids to go get an ice cream or a coffee, then that's going to happen. Okay. I think that would be a really good thing. And a gas station, please.
Need a gas station.
Oh yeah, I don't want to drive 7 miles to a gas station.
Feelings on the designs that we showed tonight? Is there one that looks better than, does one seem more appropriate than another?
I liked the last one that had the 2 sidewalks with the art there. Okay. I think art is pretty awesome. Maybe some murals. Okay. Definitely get people's names out there for sure that are local artists.
Got it. So, okay, thank you for that. I think this young lady near Teresa.
Thank you. Yes, my name is Lena Elliston, and I would love to see a traffic light or something at the top of Alcantara, where Alcantara meets onto Port St. Lucie Boulevard, because it's Alcantara is a very well-traveled road. And to get onto Port St. Lucie Boulevard, it's almost impossible. Sometimes there's a line of traffic going all the way down on Alcantara. So I know the plan is to add new lanes, but I'm not sure when that will be. So I don't know if anything could be done before that. But right now, it's just very difficult to get onto Port St. Lucie Boulevard to go anywhere on that area, in that area.
Okay, well, look, especially, I've heard Alcantara a number of times, so that's a road that I think we know we need to really understand. If there are speeding problems, how can they be resolved, and what happens at the intersection in particular.
Okay, thank you.
Behind you again, Jordan. Oh, I'm sorry.
That's okay. I just wanted to thank everyone for taking their time out this evening and providing this feedback. Your feedback is extremely critical for us to help develop your strategic plan. And I know everyone has families and jobs. And so this feedback will be taken back to council and provided to us as far as we continue to design this. It's important to understand that right now, it's really important to hear what you don't want, but I also want to really hear, and I think council wants to hear what you do want, because what you do want is going to help give us an indicator of what are the things that we need to hit to make sure your quality of life is addressed. And then we can also hit, well, what's not going to work? The bulb out may not work because of this issue. And so I really want to make sure that we get the feedback of what you do want, and I want to be able to talk about some of the good things that are coming. But strategic planning is in March. And so we do have some time. Citizen Summit is coming up. What day? Do we know what day the Citizen Summit's coming up? I think that's soon too, in March or February. In February, the Citizen Summit is where you can also come, and there's a larger opportunity to talk about many different items on. Oh, okay, January. January 17th is our Citizen Summit. So we ask you also to come out if you're available for that. That's going to give you the opportunity to hit on many different areas that the city that we're looking for feedback on as well. Then we go into retreat in March. And when we go into retreat, that's going to give us the ability to hone down these plans and prepare them for you. So again, with the bottom of my heart, it's an honor and a privilege to serve on behalf of our 5-member council and the citizens, which we appreciate your time. Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Sorry, it made me think of something else. When you drive down Becker, I know this isn't about Becker, but one of the things that's a safety issue is there's no right turn lanes anywhere. Are we going to have right turn lanes? Because if you're in the right lane and you have to slam on your brakes at every light, every driveway, everything, that causes accidents. And so it pushes everybody to the left side. And like right now at Parr, they created the right turn lane to turn west onto Parr from the north, and literally everybody uses that. I've asked the city to just hang out there in the parking lot and check out that corner. If you wait there and you're going to turn left, so you're going to go west or east on Parr, everybody goes around you in the right turn lane, and that's going to cause a lot of accidents.
Okay, we'll look at all the intersection conditions. So that when we bring a plan back for you guys to look at, it'll identify what's planned and maybe some ideas that we find to improve beyond that. Other questions in the front? Okay. We'll come back in a moment, okay? And then I do want to take a chance to go through on the Zoom because there are a number of comments in there. So I can communicate those to you guys and be sure that we respond.
My name is Chris Coulter. I've been here since 1997, and I've seen the city grow by leaps and bounds. And if there's one thing I want to do right now is I want to move. And there's one reason I want to move, and it's the TRAFFIC. It's horrible throughout the city. I mean, not just in this corridor. But I agree with the gentleman back here that said, if you're going to 4 lanes, it really needs to go to 6 lanes because the city is growing and we don't want to make a mistake of not making it wide enough. So you guys will have to figure that out down the road. But what I do like is the idea of the sidewalk being off of the main road or highway, whatever it's going to be. Like with drivers now not paying attention, I would not feel comfortable walking down a sidewalk that's adjacent to the roadway. So I like that idea of putting the sidewalk off to the side. Also, I agree that Alcantara needs work. That's a heavily traveled intersection. I agree that there should be a light there. I do like the idea of the improvements near the canals. Putting something there for people to sit down and relax or workout station. As far as the art goes, I think art is subject to interpretation. What seems beautiful to one person may look like something came from the sky and crashed there, so it's, instead of art, I'm an old dude, I think something more functional would be better in that space, like a playground, or something, a workout station, something more useful. Okay. I agree that there's a place for art in the city, but like I said, it's subject to interpretation. So,
okay. We'll be cautious with that.
And I think most importantly, the intersection there at Gatlin and Port St. Lucie Boulevard, it's a nightmare right now, so I think there needs to be special attention to that intersection. There's traffic coming from all directions that's backed up there, and I would love to move away from the city just because of the traffic, but I'm planted here, so I have to stay here for at least a little while longer. But that's my only frustration here in the city is the traffic. Okay. And the driver's not paying attention.
So there's a relationship, of course, between that breakdown that people don't want to walk or bike at all and the amount of traffic that's on the roadway network. I mean, those two things are actually tied together,
yeah.
Right? So if you're driving to go get that thing, right, or get that service, and you could walk or bike there instead, that car's not on the roadway network. So, so that's one of the relationships that we want to better understand. So if we can do a better job as a city of making it comfortable to not have to drive or park once, right, and do more than one thing with that one car trip, we actually help break down the TRA-FFIC thing, right? So, so that's a relationship that we want to better understand. So we definitely have heard there are problems getting to the corridor. I don't feel safe letting my kids out there. And traffic's moving too quickly. And PSL Speedway is the name of the road. So I think this feedback seems to be pretty consistent that we want to at least explore ways to calm traffic, ways to improve pedestrian and bicyclist access to see if we can help better balance those relationships. Dana, you want to add something?
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
Just to your point. I'm just curious, the traffic that's bad enough that makes you want to move.
Here, Dan.
Thank you. Sorry to complicate things. I'm curious, though, the traffic that is bad enough that's making you want to move, and the only thing that would make you want to move, as I understand, is it peak hour, peak direction, like afternoon, mornings, or is it like my old town, Miami, where it's just all day, every day?
It's to the point now where it's at really any time, and it takes you 20 or 30 minutes to get, or more, from one side of the city to the other, for sure. You know, and it's just not efficient at all. There's just too much traffic, and the lanes aren't wide enough, and it's a nightmare. I mean, for the speeding part, I mean, there needs to be more enforcement. Okay, so there's little or no enforcement for speeding in our neighborhoods or on Port St. Lucie Boulevard. So it's really a free-for-all out there, and that's what it feels like when you're driving in Port St. Lucie. It's a free-for-all, and it's crazy, really.
So it's so what you're describing, right? That imbalance of transportation and land use, and the other part of it is the imbalance in land use types. I'm supposed to stay here. Always going to yell at me. The imbalance between those things is why the city wants to develop a plan for the corridor. So the city knows it's inherited a condition that is really hard to resolve, right? 80,000 residents without jobs for those residents as part of the initial plan creates part of the condition that we're in today, right? And 80,000 residents without the ability to go to the grocery store, go to the bank, get gas for their car, and get daily needs fairly close by creates the condition that we have today. So the city is trying to kind of zoom out, if you will, and figure out what are the pieces of this equation that aren't working well. I have to drive 20 or 30 or 50 miles to work and come home. That's extra traffic on the roadway network that takes away from the quality of life, right? I don't have anywhere to go on the weekend. So I work somewhere else, and then I come home, and then I drive somewhere else on the weekend. So that's another impact on the roadway network, loss of revenue for the city, quality of life impact. So the city's trying to figure out how it can reposition those relationships, if you will, to get it to work better. So it's not easy. Redevelopment is much harder than new development. New development is easy. Greenfield development, it's not hard to make a great place when you start with a clean slate. It's much harder to go in and do repair work. And so we know that's a challenge. The city knows it's a challenge. It doesn't want to lose the residents like you, right, that are saying, gosh, I'm really frustrated because there's so much traffic in the city. So this is what this repair effort is trying to do.
Yeah, I mean, the city's growing at such a fast rate, the infrastructure just can't keep up. That's all it is, really. It's just.
So, and that's where, and I think what we're trying to race to catch up, and while we're in the process of catching up, fix some problems that maybe weren't addressed in the optimal way when that infrastructure was put in place the first time. So, this gentleman is the only gentleman that hasn't had a chance to speak yet, and then I want to go through some of the the comments online so everyone can be aware of what the dialogue is like. And then I will come back. I promise you, we will stay until everyone's comments are addressed. Okay? But I want everyone to have a chance to participate.
Barry Grant, and you said the magic thing, the city's trying to catch up. And that seems to be the mode of the city, is it's always behind the 8 ball. This meeting should have taken place several years ago when they widened Becker and put in the connector on 95. And anybody that didn't foresee this traffic problem on this end of Port St. Lucie Boulevard at the time, you know where their head was. And now you've waited. The other day, I drove from Jingle to Becker. There's 20 porta potties alongside the road where houses are being built, and that's short section. And that's not counting the other dozen or so houses that have been built there in the last year or so. And you know, so and now, well, we don't have room for all that. Who let them build all that? You know, you're trying to catch up. And most of what I saw when you first started was, you know, the problem is relieve the traffic congestion, make the travel more efficient. And you're putting up bulbs, storefronts close to the street to slow them down. The problem isn't it's too fast there, it's too slow. You want to calm traffic? Put in another bus stop, because every time a bus stops, it backs up for a mile. And before that clears, the next bus comes along and stops up again. That's the issue. It's the congestion. You know, build your 4 lanes. All this other stuff should be secondary. If you've got a grant to build a sidewalk along Canal, start pouring pavement. I don't care. But I was watching these people put up this all the above. I don't see them out here holding their wallets out or giving you their credit cards. I'm sure most of us in here are on a fixed income. I know I am. You know, and it's easy to wish for it one hand, but there ain't no money in the other hand to give you. So all the stuff that you're talking about, if it's not going to enhance the flow of traffic, pass over it.
Okay.
No, if you want to build, you know, don't put a bike lane on the side of the road, you know, a 3rd lane for them, because you'd be a fool to ride in one, because you get run over. That's a fact, and it happens all the time. Look on the news, another hit and run somebody on a bicycle. You know, if you can't get them a separate lane off, like in that one scene, you know, just skip it, you know. Ride somewhere else if that's what it takes. But focus on relieving the congestion. Get the traffic flowing effectively. And then if you want to build a gas station on the corner of Becker, I don't care. That's some company's business to build that. You know, if you want to say it has to look this way, that's fine. But you're asking a lot of input for stuff that really has little to do with solving this problem. So, you know.
I hear your frustration, so, and it's great to have a council member here as well. So.
And just like he mentioned, the gapping, well, we'll make it 4 lanes. And somebody wisely thought, yeah, that'll last about 5 years. Let's go ahead and make it 6. You know, I don't know if there's going to be room for 6 lanes. You know, maybe that may not happen. But, you know, let's get the 4 lanes in there and make it effective. You know, if you need a traffic light at Alcantara, put traffic light in. I don't care, you know. It'll probably be better than the poor slob trying to get out of it in the traffic sitting there for 15 minutes. You know, focus on efficiency of that street.
Yeah.
And the parks and the sidewalks on the canals and the artwork. I hate to think what they spent on wrapping the traffic control boxes, you know. But, you know, put the effort where to solve the problem, not, you know, beautify the city per se.
Okay, so.
Yeah, lipstick.
So, thank you for that. And I was going to go to the Zoom call because there are, if you can hang on for just a moment, let me just see if there's any outstanding questions in Zoom that have been asked while we've been having our conversation here, because everyone has a chance to participate. There are a series of, there we go. So an additional concern about the corner of PSL and Alcantara. So that's certainly an intersection that we want to address. The new street by Galbraith at Becker could be a conflict with the pathway. Okay, I don't see any other. And how to reach out to the planning department, question online. That contact information is in the presentation. So, okay. All the questions are now answered. I know there were a couple building up. Yes?
Yes, Dr. Delaney, I'll go ahead and let Jordan take this over, and then I'll go over, there's some, basically some comments that I can provide.
Okay.
So, thank you, Jordan.
Okay, Diane Goldberg. You did say that there was going to be limited right-of-way, but I would like to make sure that there is a pullover area for buses so that you don't have the problems of slowing down traffic because everybody has to wait for a street bus. The public transportation is a wonderful idea, and I think I'm from New York originally. I've been down here for over 40 years, but those buses came every 5 minutes. Now, I wouldn't mind waiting even 15 minutes, but you're not going to get people, except for the low income or people who can't drive, to take a bus if they have to wait for more than 15 minutes. If you can do that, then public transportation can work. I would also like to see for bike stands and covered areas for our kids waiting for their buses, and this should be on side streets, not on main streets, because that is a big problem where we have to worry about the children getting hit by cars. Unfortunately, it has happened where the children waiting in wet grass or whatever, in cold weather or hot weather, are unfortunately get into the street and get hit. So that would really, I think, be a great help. And I appreciate your attention. Thank you.
Sure. Okay. Online. Laura? Here you go. I'll give you this one.
Doing double duty right now. All right, so a couple of comments from the public that I've been keeping track of as everyone's been providing their input. One individual stated that pedestrian improvements are nice, but they're not the most optimal as it's too hot and there's too much single-family housing, and it would really take too long of a time to walk to any store or bus stop, which was one of their biggest concerns, being the public transportation availability along the network. Another individual said they did not want to see gas stations on the corner of Becker and PSL. Another individual focused primarily upon what we call pedestrian amenities, such as seating or rest areas along the roadway. They wanted to see more of those, and stated that they wanted to see a mixed use for singles and small families, housing for seniors on ground floor level, or prefer affordable apartments rather than larger homes, also housing for singles, and also encouraged more public transportation to cut down on traffic. We had several comments on Alcantara. There were about 5 comments in concern to that roadway network, which seems to be a resounding narrative. Also concerns about PAR and Port St. Lucie Boulevard. Another individual did not want to see any big box stores located along PSL or Becker area. Another individual wanted to state that with the increase in families, that there should be more recreation in park area. And lastly, an individual stated that with the growth in the tradition area, the population over there moving in was going to create more of an issue with transportation.
Okay, super. Okay. I think everyone's had a chance to participate tonight, which is great. So first, thank you for spending this time with us, because great plans only happen when there's great public input. We're very strong believers. More public input makes for better planning outcomes. So I think it's wonderful for the community that Councilmember Caraballo was able to participate. This meeting, of course, is recorded, so all the comments in Zoom and all the comments that we have here are all part of the record. That's all input. I'm going to, could you put the presentation back on, Avi, and I'll jump forward to my last 2 slides. Okay. If you can just hit save, Dana. Great. Now you could just probably go to the next slide, and it should, there we go. Here, let me just, whoa, too fast. If you could double click on that guy, thank you so much. So, in terms of process, we have finished due diligence, background information. We've done a whole series of stakeholder interviews. Tonight's the first workshop. There's a second workshop that we're scheduling in April. We are available for your feedback. We would encourage you to please talk to neighbors, let them know that this process is underway. We will be going through scenario planning and doing financial analyses as well, so that we can bring back a set of recommendations to you guys as a community, and then ultimately to the City Council later this year. So second workshop in April, and the recommendations expected in the summer. And with that, I will tell you thank you for your time this evening. So again, my contact information is here, Laura's contact information as well, and drive safely home. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody, for coming out.